Good morning. Yay. My name's Matt Russell, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a member of the UUI Ministerial Search Committee, and we are deeply engaged in finding someone to recommend for y'all as a new minister. So if you're here for the first time, thank you for joining us. We look forward to getting to know you. We invite everyone present in the sanctuary today to join us for our in-person coffee hour immediately following the service. This congregation, it is a lively and busy place with many opportunities to participate. And as a member of the search committee, I really want to encourage and thank those who have already signed up for one of our listening sessions. Because of your early response, the session on the September 14th, it's already filled. Yay! But don't worry, there's more. There are 8 other sessions, so try and fill those up too. They're both in person and via Zoom. So these listening sessions, they're an opportunity for members, friends, and returning visitors to share your thoughtful perspective with us to help shape the future ministry. So if you've got feedback you'd like to share outside of those sessions, we have an email address. It's just msc@uui.org. You can participate in a survey that we're going to be sending out. There will also be focus sessions that we have for different groups of people or different ministries. Those are all coming up in October. So you can sign up for one of the listening sessions after the service out here in the social hall at the table that we'll have for the next 2 Sundays. Or there are also, information in the e-blast. There are QR codes on a flyer out there, or just ask one of us. So we also have an announcement this morning from our beloved chair of the Board of Trustees, Sharon Crust. We are excited to announce that Sarah Nemechek has accepted the role of Vice President of our Board of Trustees. Yay! I did not see Sarah this morning. There she is, hiding in the back there. Can you stand up so people can actually see you? Yay! So her appointment will be confirmed at a congregational meeting within the next 90 days. We are very lucky to have her leadership and her energy on the board. There are many other announcements. They're located in your bulletin and also in an email if you're getting those. So during our service, there's a time for sharing the joys and sorrows of our lives with one another. And there are these cards on that table back there as you come in. We ask that you pick up one and fill it out prior to that part of the service, just so that we keep things moving. So, rooted in the values of Unitarian Universalism, we covenant to be a congregation where people of all generations find meaning and purpose. We work to be a congregation that lives in sacred interdependence by caring deeply for one another, our community, and our planet, with a commitment to sustainably and mutually support each other. Once again, we're really glad that you're here today. Hope you find this service meaningful and insightful. Good morning again. I'm back. So I'm also the worship associate for this morning. So a lit chalice is the symbol of our faith in Unitarian Universalism. It's a light of sanctuary and solidarity, and it's kindled in community and carried into the world by all of us. And this morning, Reverend Dorian Condre will be lighting the chalice, and you'll hear more about them later on in the service, and they will be delivering the message. As we light our chalice in the sanctuary, I invite those on Zoom to light a chalice or a candle and to type your location into the chat. Our chalice lighting and opening words today are by Reverend Nathan Ryan. They are the senior minister of the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. And the title of this is A Renewed Hope for This World. Be it real or metaphor, whatever is in your backpack or your briefcase or your purse that you've brought into the sanctuary that's weighing you down, leave it behind. Whatever you're carrying that is keeping you distracted or caught up in shame or guilt or hopelessness, leave it behind. If you need it, it'll be there when we're done. But for this hour, just let it go. Come into this place with open hearts. Come into this place with a soul that has remembered how to be tender again. Come into this place with a renewed hope for this world. And also, come into this place ready to build a world we've been worthy of and have dreamed of.
Please rise in body or in spirit as we join together in singing hymn number 194, Faith is a Forest.
Would you please now join me in saying our covenant, which is on the screen and in your bulletin. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. And now to say our covenant in Spanish. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos unos a otros. Este es nuestro pacto. Please be seated.
So that covenant that we just recited, it contains the words to help one another. So an expression of that helping one another is an opportunity to share the joys and sorrows of our lives with one another so that they can be held in community together. So as the music plays in a minute, I invite people here in the sanctuary to come up and drop a stone into the bowl up here. If there's something on your heart today, whether it be a joy or a sorrow, please come and use both sides of the table. If you have written your joy or sorrow on a card, please leave that in the basket up here as well. Please note that the cards are by the entrance back there. For those of you on Zoom, we invite you to use the chat feature. Please put in all caps either joy or sorrow, plus your name and pronouns at the beginning of what you're sharing, if you'd like me to read it out loud in the sanctuary. You can also symbolically drop a stone by just typing into the chat, drop stone, or just DS. Please. So, as usual, there is always a mixture of joys and sorrows within any group of people, and I will share the ones that were shared with us. So, Jim shares a sorrow that he's concerned about Bob Lipford in his recovery from a recent surgery. And Mike shares a joy that yesterday we celebrated 19 years since my kidney and liver transplant. Yes. And Dan shares that I got a new job, and it is super awesome. And Lydia shares a joy. I'm happy that we will get to watch a movie after the service. And Mary Beth shares that her 32-year-old nephew came out publicly as her niece, May. So proud of her and love her even more. And Gobi shares with us that joy that they're so glad that their birthday was awesome while at White Pine Wilderness Academy. And I had online here from Jen, they got up early today and got to see the sunshine through their bedroom window, always good. School starts tomorrow, and they have been working at straightening up their apartment and getting things ready. This is good. Feel much better and less anxious and worried. That's always a good thing. And Eclipse shares that they have a sorrow. Their beloved childhood cat went over the rainbow, and wherever that may be, rest in power. I think the cat's name is Scaredy. So, not all the joys and sorrows in this group are shared publicly, but we know that they're in your heart and in your life. So, if you would join me now and just pause for a moment of prayer or meditation, just a couple breaths, slow in and out is all I'm asking for, just a moment of reflection. Blessed be and amen.
Good morning. It is so beautiful to sit and watch our kids saying the covenant without even looking up at the slide, just they're coloring and they're saying the whole thing by memory, singing Spirit of Life upside down in a chair. Like, when they know it, y'all. Like, that feels good. So this is the part of the service where people who would like to get a closer look and sit up close can feel free to join me at the front. We don't have slides today, but you still might want to get a front row seat. It's just up to you. Good morning, Walter. Hi. Good to see everybody. So Dorian is doing the sermon today, Reverend Dorian, and that's pretty exciting because I get to talk to Dorian on just a normal day, but not everybody does. So that's pretty cool. And believe it or not, Reverend Dorian inspired me to share not one but two stories with you today. And I promise there's a good reason, but you're going to have to trust me. So how many people here know the story of the Garden of Eden? I see some hands. Oh, I see some hands. I do not see very many kid hands, which is part of why I am telling this story. This is a very fundamental tale to several different religions, okay? This story is in the Muslim Quran, and it's in both the Jewish and the Christian Bibles. So it's important for UUs to know stories like this from different theologies because they come up a lot, both among our UU friends and our non-UU friends, right? They're just good to know. So the way that this story goes, at the beginning of the world, there was a higher power, which some people call God, and God made Adam, and Adam was like the first person ever. So God made Adam out of clay, and then Eve was made from Adam's rib. And God put them in this beautiful garden called the Garden of Eden, where they had everything they could ever possibly need. See, now it's ringing a bell, right? And all they had to do was not eat the fruit of this certain tree. Okay, so Christians often call it the tree of knowledge, and that's the phrase that I grew up with. And Jewish texts call it the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is a little bit different. And the Quran calls it the tree of immortality. And its fruit, which they weren't supposed to eat, is like often pictured in these here parts as an apple, but like we don't really know. Like the sacred texts never really tell us what kind of fruit it actually was. Now, God warns Adam and Eve that there will be consequences if they eat the fruit. In the Quran, he warns them that they'll have to leave the Garden of Eden, right? And in the Jewish and Christian Bibles, he tells them that it could lead to death, right? Which usually we avoid things that we hear could lead to death. But curiosity is a powerful thing. And eventually Adam and Eve, like they get curious and they eat the fruit. And some versions of the Christian Bible say this is mostly Eve's fault, but like the Quran says it was a team effort. So, but what happens afterward is that because Adam and Eve broke their covenant with God, they did have to leave Eden. All three stories, in various ways, tell us that Adam and Eve might have lived forever if they hadn't broken their covenant with God. Though the Quran does tell us that God at least forgave them, right? And I remember as a kid feeling like God was kind of selfish in this story because, like, in my church, we called it the tree of knowledge, right? And I loved to read, and I loved school, and I loved to learn. And so I kind of thought it was uncool of God to, like, hoard all the knowledge and to punish Adam and Eve for wanting to know stuff. And, like, I also didn't appreciate that Eve got kind of blamed, but, like, right? So that is the first story. But there's a second one. So who here likes like paleontology and archaeology, like those sciences where we dig stuff up? Yeah, right? And my friend Carla loved that stuff. She passed away recently, but she was an archaeologist and she liked to go out on digs. So she would love that I'm telling you this story. So in 1995, which I'm going to just acknowledge probably seems like a million years ago if you're a kid, but like I was in college, right? Archaeologists who were working in Turkey found the ruins of a place that we now call Göbekli Tepe. And this place blew everybody's minds, like super complex carvings and like these big stone temples that they were like, wow, that must have been hard to build because they had to bring the stone from like really far away and the pieces were huge, right? Göbekli Tepe is located in a spot that you might have read about in social studies. So it's between two rivers called the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. And this is the first cities that ever existed on Earth were located. And what most of us learned in school is that the cities were there because that soil was so rich that people like learned to farm. And then once they learned to farm, there was more than enough food. And then they had time to fiddle around with things like building cities, right? So, but it turns out that Göbekli Tepe kind of blows that idea to smithereens because it's much, much older than the oldest cities that we knew about, and it is older than farming. In fact, some archaeologists now think we had it totally backward. Like to build a place as cool as Göbekli Tepe, people had to invent farming so that like they didn't have to stop what they were doing and go hunt and gather for food, right? Now, the people that made Göbekli Tepe eventually abandoned it, and there are a lot of theories about why. But the one that made me sit up and be like, whoa, was this. Some experts think that it stopped being a good place to farm because they wore out the soil. You see, like, the soil between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers is really rich, but it's not, the rich part's not very deep, right? So if you farm on it again and again and again, like eventually you run out of nutrients. And Göbekli Tepe was kind of like up on a ridge, so even when the river flooded and replaced some of those nutrients, it didn't always make it all the way up there, right? So human beings lived in this beautiful place, right, where they had everything that they needed, and then they kind of wrecked it, and they had to leave, kind of like Adam and Eve, right? So there are archaeologists who think Göbekli Tepe is the real-life place that inspired the Garden of Eden. Now, you can still look at that place and you can still think, okay, that's a story about like God warning somebody not to do something and they did it anyway and it didn't go well. But it might also be a metaphor about protecting the habitat that we live in. It might be about the danger of charging ahead, new idea and a new technology, and not thinking about how it might affect the earth. And I'm totally waiting for Crow at this moment to be like, yeah, like AI, right? But like, you're not wrong. Okay. So I tell you these two stories because as you need to know that this is how we approach religion. And if you're like, religion, yeah, what is that again? Religion is our ideas about like why things happen and like good and evil and whether there's a higher power and what it does and what it doesn't do, right? Because like out from behind the tree and be like, you shall not pass, like Gandalf, and put down a staff, right? Like they got to make a decision about whether they were going to eat that fruit or not. And you also like to choose. We like to compare different versions of different stories and see what's the same, what's different. We like to see what science has to say about it. And when we find new stuff, we sometimes change our minds, which really annoys some of our religious neighbors. Not all of them, but like some. But it's really important to do because if we just nod along all the time and we're like, yeah, I'm sure you're right, we miss a lot of cool possibilities. And religion is about like the biggest questions that we have. So we're not going to just leave cool possibilities lying around, right? Like we want to know. So we've only got a couple of Sundays left before we start a whole new year in RE. And I hope that you will spend this year comparing stories, asking good questions, and checking out interesting possibilities. Okay? Let us sing our way out to religious exploration.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace. May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
So as promised, I finally get to introduce this person who has been sitting here very quietly and patiently. So this is the Reverend Dorian Condre. They're ordained in the Disciples of Christ tradition and work at both UUI, they run comms and the rental coordinator, and at All Souls Indy, another UU church, and they run membership and comms coordinator. So while at Bright Divinity School, Dorian found a love for storytelling as a way of connecting to the divine and each other. Like all good stories, Dorian's stories are given to you to make of them what you will.
Before beginning, I ask you to take a moment to pause with me and, as a community, take a deep breath in and out. As we rest in this collective moment, may the words of my mouth and meditations in our hearts honor our spirit. I am here today to tell you a story. It's not a new story, as you just heard Sarah explain, nor will I be the first to tell it. In fact, it has been passed down for so long that nobody can really be sure how it was originally told. And it has been told so many times in so many ways. So here I am today to tell you my version. Many years ago, in fact, so long ago that time was new, there was a garden. And within this garden lived a God, and this God loved caring for their garden. And this garden might be a little different from those you may have visited or even the one in your backyard. The plants in this garden held emotions and feelings. By eating the fruit of the plants, one could learn the feelings that God planted with that fruit. A cherry could teach you about love, a pear, joy, an orange, anger, and so on. The God made animals to eat the fruit, but the animals weren't really able to share their experiences and honestly didn't seem that interested in engaging with God. They seemed happy to eat the plants and sleep and run, maybe have a group they hung out with, but rarely did they pass the time with the God. And because the animals were never with God, the God grew lonely. And so they decided to try creation again. This time, using themselves as a model, the God created Adam, or human. God looked upon this creation and called it good. And God created all different types of humans. None looked or acted exactly like God or even each other, but each one was loved by this God. God and the humans lived in the garden together. They talked, they played, they laughed, they cried. The humans and God created a life together. God encouraged them to eat the fruits and learn the many feelings that God planted, but God warned them about a tree in the corner of the garden. It was overgrown and neglected, but still bore fruits occasionally. And God warned the humans that eating that fruit would fundamentally change their relationship, and they would not be able to live in the garden anymore. The humans, not worried about the one tree because they had so many to choose from, were happy. They ate, they played, they learned about the feelings and learned how to communicate them. They learned what felt good and what didn't, what was necessary to maintain relationships, what was helpful in one situation but maybe not another. But one day, the plant in the corner that God had warned them about began to start looking better. Whispers around the garden started. Was God caring for it again? Was it someone else, one of the humans? A really clever animal? The humans tried to ignore it, but inevitably their curiosity grew. And the tree and the fruit it bared just kept getting more and more appealing. The fruit was shiny and red, and the humans talked about how other feelings found their place within community. So why couldn't this one? And God once again warned them of what eating that fruit would mean. Their relationship would never be the same. The humans once again promised, "We won't eat the fruit, it won't happen. God, you can trust us." But that fruit just kept getting more and more tempting. The humans had learned that even feelings that were not comfortable were helpful. How could this fruit be any different? One day, a few humans were lounging near that forbidden corner of the garden. God was on the other side of the garden playing a game that one of the humans had made. And since this group was not interested in playing that game, they decided to find a warm, sunny space to lounge about and chat. They had not intended to get so close to that corner of the garden, but the sun was just so warm there. They sat and chatted and laughed. Then one of them pointed at the tree, and the usual questions were asked. Who was caring for it? Do you think someone's already eaten it? What could the feeling possibly be? And then the usual speculations were made as well. A smart animal, God was changing their mind. If it was so bad as God said, we would know if someone ate it. Maybe it was something like anger, but worse. Then a new question was asked. Why won't God tell us what it is? And this question had no speculations, no answers. They couldn't think of a reason why God would not tell them. God told them everything. Why not this thing? After some time of silence, one of them said, "What if it's really good, like too good?" This was also met with a moment of silence, and they sat and looked at the tree some more. The red fruit looked so ripe. Someone finally piped up. Would anyone know? I mean, if we ate some, people wouldn't know unless we tell them, right? God would have to know, though, because God said we wouldn't be able to live in the garden anymore if we did that. But then someone responded to that question, but God's never kicked anyone out before. Even when we yelled or even fought, we were able to stay. Surely God can forgive us. Everyone agreed God would forgive them. And they hesitated. Then someone, though nobody really knew who, said, "They sure do look tasty." They all cautiously picked the fruit and slowly took a bite. It was crisp. They felt the clean snap in their mouth and juice that ran down their chin. It was not the best fruit in the garden, but it definitely was up there. A solid fruit, one of them described it as. And each one paused while the feeling the fruit held washed over them. This did not feel like the other feelings. It felt icky, like they were caked in dirt, and they looked at each other and panicked. They all started to back away from one another and then turned frantically to look for something. Yells would occasionally rise up from them. "Don't look at me, I'm naked, I'm so embarrassed, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And that chaos eventually died down. They all had covered themselves in leaves and vines and blankets. They were hiding from one another, and no one dared to move. Each felt like they suddenly knew too much. On the other end of the garden, God and the other humans were returning to their village at the center. Dinner was made, and they all began to sit down, eating and yapping about the game, what they liked, what could be done differently next time, and the missing group was not concerning at first, since they did not all eat together all the time. But as the evening wore on and darkness was slowly creeping in, the humans started asking after the missing group. Folks usually checked in if they would be out at night, but this group hadn't mentioned being out late. In fact, one person remembered one of them saying they were excited for the stew they were having for dinner that night. God put together a search party, instructing folks who stayed behind to ring the bell if the group returned. God and several humans fanned out around the camp, and as they got deeper into the garden and saw it getting darker, they all started to worry a little more. God called each member of the group by name, but heard no responses in the area they were searching, and they were almost ready to move on when they heard a twig break. God looked in the direction of the sound and saw one of the humans running away. God followed, calling out to them to stop, asking if they were okay, and finally they reached the clearing in front of the tree that held what had become known as the forbidden fruit. The humans stood under the rising moon, and God saw their makeshift clothes and fell to their knees. It was clear immediately what had been done, and God began to weep. The humans stood in front of God. Why didn't you tell us all these things that are wrong with us and all of the things we do that are bad?" And they started telling God this long list of all the things wrong with themselves and the horrible things they had done, and that list felt never ending. They found fault in themselves everywhere, even in things they had been forgiven for. They spoke of plans to change themselves, and one looked directly at God and said, "You should have told us so we could have fixed it sooner. You were going to keep lying to us." And God looked up at the humans, tears still streaming down their cheeks, and looking upon their creation, God saw only perfection. God wished they had just destroyed the tree before it bore fruit. This one plant had forever changed these humans, and God urged them to find it in themselves to forget about it, to never eat of shame again, but the humans would not listen. They stormed past God, furiously ignoring him. As they passed, God saw they were carrying the apples. God ran after them, begging them not to share the fruit, to remember that God made them after themselves, and that God saw only perfection. And until they ate that fruit, they too only saw perfection. The humans shoved God off of them. "They must know," one of them said, and God begged, "Please, please." One turned to God, "How dare you? We now see what you kept from us. This wisdom of good and bad, it's so black and white." This human held God back. "Go tell them, give everyone else the fruit. They have to know this is the right way to live, and God has been having us live wrong the whole time." God struggled against this person, but they could not get past. God urged the human to listen, but their pleas were ignored, and the human just continued to yell, "How dare you?" Neither God or the human getting through to the other, but the human blocking God slowed them down. And by the time God finally got through and made it back to the village, it was too late. Everyone was searching for something to cover themselves with. And God went to the fire pit in the center of the village, and the fire had gone out with no one to tend it. God fell on their knees on top of the ashes. There was nothing that God could do for the humans now. They did not yet understand that they would not be kicked out of the garden because they ate the fruit. Rather, they would leave the garden because they ate the fruit and shame had set in. And in mourning, God adorned themselves with the ashes, their tears mixing with the ash across their face. And as God sat in those ashes, the humans began to quiet down. But that anxiety was still potent in the air. The humans were hiding from one another. They began remembering things they had done, and in their retrospect associated those memories that were once happy or peaceful with the shame they experienced thinking of it. And they all retreated to private corners of the village. The coming days were silent, but that anxiety hung thickly in the air. And silently, and one by one, the humans began searching for a way out of the garden, and they found it. God remained in the ash for those days. They watched as humans snuck out, none of the humans ever looking anyone in the eye. And there was the occasional, "Why didn't you tell me?" But mostly, people diverted their eyes and snuck out without a word. The humans started a world outside of the garden. And this world was very different from the one they had known. Instead of the vibrant, diverse community found in that garden, this world became a little more isolated. Concrete overtook green. And of course, there were communities of joy and laughter and tears and many of the things that existed within the garden. But shame rotted those other fruits, and made it difficult for the humans to stay together. The garden had changed since the humans left as well. God stayed in the ashes long after the last humans snuck away. God's tears ran out and they sat in the ash numb until one day a sprout rose above the ash. God watched as the plant grew and God cared for it. Their tears eventually returned and sometimes the plants were watered with them. God thought back to the last time they cared for a sprout that looked kind of like this. It was the last time God had made a new plant, and the fruit that grew on it turned out too bitter. God had not made a plant since then. God thought more about the circumstances the last time they gardened. It was not quite so dissimilar from the current ones. Early in their existence, God had unintentionally done something that hurt the humans, and they were upset. At that time, God ran away and hid in the corner of the garden. And in that corner, God had put all their feelings of guilt and regret into the plant. And that is what caused the bitterness. It was months later before the situation had resolved and God was finally able to admit their wrongs. And by then, the plant had been taken over by weeds. In God's apology, they shared the ways that they were sorry and were scared to confront how bad they felt about hurting the humans. God also used this time to warn them about the tree in the corner. If any of you eat from that tree, you will no longer be able to live in the garden. And they had eaten of that tree, and the humans were gone. And God mourned this loss. However, this time, God knew that they needed to do something different. Rather than dwelling on everything that God had done wrong, God thought about how much they cared for the humans. God thought about all the joy that the humans brought to the garden. God remembered the good times and the bad times, and how all of the times were full of love. And these are the thoughts that God had while working on the new plant that grew from the ash. God also put in all the love they have for the humans, because God needed this time to be different. The small sprout grew into a gorgeous tree, tall and strong. A fruit appeared, shiny with red and hints of yellow and pink. God cautiously took one down, turned it over in their hands, and took a new bite. It was cool and sweet with a satisfying crunch, and God felt something new, hope. And with nothing else but that hope, God continued to care for the tree, and they would wait for as long as it would take for the humans to heal and return to the garden. God made a promise to keep hope alive until that day. And for today, here is where we end our story. Amen and blessed be.
You can play the game, you can act out the part, even though it wasn't written for you. Tell me, how can you stand there with your broken heart, ashamed of playing the fool? One thing can lead to another, it doesn't take any sacrifice. Oh, father and mother, sister and brother, if it feels nice, don't think twice. Just shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Things are gonna work out fine if you only will. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Things are gonna be much better if you only will. Well, you can run, but you cannot hide. This is widely known. Tell me what you plan to do with your foolish pride when you're all by yourself alone. Once you tell somebody the way that you feel, you can feel it beginning to ease. I think it's true what they say about the squeaky wheel, always getting the grease. Better to shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Things are gonna be just fine if you only will. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Things are gonna be much better if you only will. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Shower the people you love with love. Show them the way you feel. Say that every light, they say the rain must fall, just like the pouring rain. Make it rain. Make it rain. Love, love, love is sunshine. Make it rain. Love, love, love is sunshine. Things are gonna be much better if you only will. There we go.
Okay, it's really hard to talk now with tears in my eyes. Oh, thank you. Excuse me. Last year, many UUI members took the Trans Inclusion in Congregations course from the Transforming Hearts Collective. It was a chance to deepen our understanding of gender identity and true inclusion. This summer, we're offering a follow-up course, Responding to the Anti-Trans Movement. It's a free 3-session program that helps participants understand gender diversity and respond to political attacks on trans people. So in the offering this morning, the Share the Plate, where we divide the plate in half and we give half to some worthy organization. So this morning, we're going to be sharing this with the Transforming Hearts Collective. Their work empowers trans and non-binary people and equips communities like ours to show up with courage and compassion. To give this morning, use your smartphone and text the donation amount along with the word share. There's a number in your bulletin or in the Zoom chat. You can also give at uui.org, but here in the sanctuary, there will be ushers coming around with a collection basket. We now welcome your offering with gratitude. May it be given with a spirit of generosity and joy. So thank you for your generosity, and thank you for all of the wonderful music this morning. So the closing words for today are from Reverend Phoenix Bell Shelton Biggs. They're a minister for the Unitarian Universalists of Cumberland Valley. So that's in Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania. And their words are, "Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth. May we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone."
Please rise in body or in spirit as we join together in singing hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small.
Voice still and small, you inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still we remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Please join me in our chalice extinguishing words on the screen and printed in your order of service. Now we extinguish the flame of our chalice, but not the light of understanding, the warmth of compassion, or the fire of commitment. Let us keep those with us until we meet again. Go in peace.